I've seen a few people talk about tech screw-ups on here, so here's mine. Only, it wasn't exactly a mistake. It started with a joke, or what they thought was a joke. I was a grad assistant in the registrar's systems group, back-end stuff. Student records, enrollment, degree audits, transcript generation, the guts of the university. I wasn't high-ranking, but I had access, because I knew what I was doing, and because I didn't complain. Until one day, I did. I brought up a scheduling issue with the spring sync job, the one that sends academic standing data to the Department of Education so students stay eligible for financial aid. It was a valid concern. The way the sync was queued could cause data mismatches if grades were posted late. I mentioned it during a Friday meeting. Teresa, the deputy registrar, laughed. Not with me, at me. She said, if it was really broken, we'd have heard about it from someone important. A few people chuckled. I didn't. That weekend, my scheduled hours were quietly cut in half. Nadia, another grad worker, later told me that Teresa said I wasn't flexible enough for system-critical tasks. Flexible meaning obedient. So I decided to prove them wrong. Or maybe just remind them how unimportant I wasn't. On the day of the sync, I waited until the office was quiet. Greg, my supervisor, had stepped out for coffee. The sync job hadn't been queued yet, so I triggered an old process, one I'd found months earlier while cleaning up legacy files. It was a full system reconciliation script. It crawled the entire database: grades, credits, transcripts, financial aid flags, enrollment statuses, every record. Not just current students, everyone. Thousands of records, going back more than a decade. It was supposed to be archived, but it still worked. I let it run for 5 minutes, then I manually stopped it, modified the logs to make it look like an automated background process, and set the blame trail to point at Greg's last patch, which I'd read through and knew contained just enough ambiguity to raise eyebrows. I didn't think it would cause damage. I thought it would delay the sync, trigger some red flags, maybe mess up a few transcript exports. Just enough to create panic, just enough to make Teresa sweat. I figured they'd waste a few days cleaning it up, and maybe someone would actually listen to me next time I raised an issue. But that's not what happened. Instead, the process rewrote over 90,000 student records. Some students lost entire semesters' worth of credits. Others gained degrees they hadn't earned. A few were shifted onto academic probation. International students were marked as withdrawn, which automatically triggers alerts to Homeland Security. Financial aid panicked. The registrar's office froze all outbound data. Transcript orders were canceled. People were calling from other departments asking why students couldn't register. It was chaos. Worse than I expected. Worse than I wanted. Then it started to snowball. Greg was suspended within a week. He didn't even know what had happened, just that his name was on the last recorded system change. He was 2 years from retirement. Nadia got caught in the fallout too. She tried to suggest that the system log didn't make sense, that the job shouldn't have run under Greg's credentials. She even hinted that someone might have tampered with it. 2 days later, she was moved off systems. They said it was for restructuring, but everyone knew what that meant. It meant she saw too much. That was the point where it stopped feeling like a prank and started feeling like a bloodletting. They didn't just take the hit and move on. They burned people. Quietly, but thoroughly. It worked in my favor. No one looked lower down. They assumed the mess was above their pay grade. Meanwhile, I deleted the script, the backups, the job ID, everything that tied it to me. I got away clean. I got what I wanted. Except, of course, I didn't.
A month later, I ran into a student in the hallway outside financial aid. She was crying. Her aid was delayed. She was out of housing. Nobody was answering her emails. She was 2 weeks from graduation. I looked her in the eye and told her the system was broken and we were doing our best. She thanked me. I didn't sleep that night. But I didn't confess either. The university replaced the system after that. Upgraded everything. They said it was long overdue, that the old vendor had failed to meet standards. No one mentioned Greg, or Nadia, or me. The chaos caused panic for thousands of innocent people, but among them, there was some real hardship. The legal costs to the university ran into the millions. I feel bad for being the one to push it, but it was a house of cards anyone could have blown over. I'm sorry to the staff who lost their jobs and the students who had their lives shattered.
I was working third shift at a warehouse distribution center about 5 years ago. Midwest, off-highway, rural enough that nobody paid attention unless something caught fire. The facility processed bulk shipments, heavy-duty outdoor goods, hardware, propane-fueled grills, patio heaters, that kind of thing. A lot of sharp metal, poorly stacked pallets, forklifts operated by sleep-deprived guys with Bluetooth headsets and no peripheral vision. I've been there 3 years, which in that place made me a veteran. I ran the late shift loading dock. Most of my job was scanning inventory and pretending to check the manifest. There were a lot of ways to get hurt. Not just slip and fall hurt. I mean burnt, crushed, impaled, shredded. We had an incident where a guy got dragged 4 feet by a power pallet jack and nobody noticed until the wheel jammed on his belt buckle. But the propane tanks, those were something else. They came in half pallets, shrink-wrapped, 4 or 5 per skid. Most of the tanks were supposed to be empty, dummy units or factory-supplied near-empty tanks for demonstration equipment. But sometimes we'd get partially full ones. No one really tracked it. Safety protocol said treat every tank as live, but we didn't. Nobody had time. The mistake I made wasn't a mistake. Let me be clear about that up front. There was a guy named Evan, safety supervisor. Just hired, young, beard too neat, clipboard too full. He came in all bright-eyed and started issuing write-ups on day 2. Speeding on forklifts, non-compliant PPE, unsecured straps. Most of it fair, some of it personal. He wrote me up for improper manifest verification. A bullshit citation. I hadn't done anything differently than I had the last 100 nights. He was just trying to prove something. To corporate, to himself, I don't know. A week later, I was passed over for the team lead role. No warning, just a new guy from Dayside promoted over me. So I did what I did. In the back of the shipping lane, we had a staging area for bulk propane units, the ones that ship out as accessories for patio heaters. The tanks came in shrink-wrapped columns, labeled safe for transit. But I knew at least one of the tanks wasn't empty. You could hear the slosh if you shook it. I cut the shrink wrap. Just a little. Not enough to notice unless you were looking for it. And then I tipped the tank slightly, just enough to shift its resting angle. Laid it back wrong, bent the mech. Nothing visible, nothing suspicious. Then I rewrapped it. Lightly. Not the full industrial seal, just enough to hold together. That pallet got loaded onto a truck marked for Southern distribution, multi-stop delivery downstate. It was scanned, logged, and gone by 4:10 a.m. 4 days later, there was a local news story. Explosion outside Home and Garden Retail Center. Injuries reported, investigation ongoing. I clicked it out of curiosity. Then I read the next one. 2 hospitalized following propane fire. Delivery packaging under review. There were no names, no charges. The cause was marked undetermined. But I recognized the product line in the photo. The same outdoor heaters I used to move every night. I knew that tank. The barcode was half visible. I zoomed in. Enhanced. It matched our batch. It was the one I staged. Now here's the part you'd expect me to say I felt something. Guilt, horror, even shock. I didn't. What I felt was a strange, slow clarity, like watching someone lose a game they never realized they were playing. Because Evan, the safety guy, got interviewed in one of the follow-up stories, said the warehouse took every precaution and that the incident likely occurred due to improper handling by retail staff. They printed his quote next to a picture of the burned truck bed. He smiled in it. 3 weeks later, the warehouse announced a new safety initiative. Visible tags, extra training, blah, blah, blah. A bunch of useless protocols no one followed. But Evan? He got promoted. Regional safety compliance. Gone by the end of the month. He never knew. He never even looked in my direction. He thought he'd won something. And the new guy who got the team lead position? He cracked under pressure. Couldn't keep up. Got demoted a month later. Guess who stepped in quietly to fill the role on paper? Yeah. I heard the driver who offloaded that shipment at the store had long-term smoke complications. No lawsuit. No charges. Nobody traced it back to us. Certainly not to me. All the tanks were disposed of before investigators arrived. One of the retail guys quit after the fire. Another transferred. Nobody died, technically. But I saw the video someone posted. A short clip from a parking lot camera across the street. A flash, then black smoke rolling over the delivery zone. People running. You could hear someone screaming. That video used to bother me. Now? Not really. You can't set fire to something and act surprised when it burns. They built that place like nothing mattered. Cut corners, shaved seconds, ignored warnings, and then handed enforcement to a clipboard kid who didn't understand the room. I gave them a consequence. They survived it. Some didn't, probably. I moved on. Different job now. Quieter. Still logistics. Still propane, actually. Some nights I think about reaching out to Evan, just to ask how he's enjoying regional. But I don't. Let him think he earned it.
I worked floor security at a casino just outside Vegas. Not the ones with fountains or rooftop clubs, the kind of place with fixed smiles and compte pays, where the carpet was loud and the conversations were quiet. The job was simple. Watch. Every movement, every face, every bet. You didn't stop anything unless you had a reason, and once you had a reason, you better be able to prove it to 3 cameras and 2 managers. That's how they trained us. We weren't supposed to guess. We were supposed to know. Tommy had been there longer than me. He wasn't sharp, exactly, but he had a clean uniform and a voice that made guests feel calm. Management liked him. They called him reliable, said he had good instincts. I didn't really talk to him outside of shift handoffs, but we shared the floor 3 nights a week. I knew his tells, the way his hand hovered over his radio when something felt off, the way he did a subtle head tilt when a player's bet didn't match their demeanor. He was good, which is why it caught me off guard when I realized what he was doing. It started on a Friday, table 7, late shift. There was a player I hadn't seen before, guy in his 30s wearing a casual, rich look. Too clean, too composed, no drink, no wasted words. He won steadily, not fast, just steady. But what got me wasn't him. It was Tommy. Every time the player checked the shoe,
Tommy shifted position. Just slightly, a quarter turn, a pocket check, a lean against the bar rail, like he was adjusting for comfort. But it was too rhythmic. Then I noticed the woman 2 tables over. She wasn't playing, just watching. Nothing in her hand, no drink. Every time the player at 7 paused, she tapped her purse. After the 3rd tap, the player doubled down on a hand that didn't make sense. And won. Big. That's when I knew. They were counting. A team. And Tommy was helping them. He wasn't leading it, he was just part of the machine. But still, he was floor staff. And if anyone else noticed, they'd torch him without a second thought. I should have reported it. Instead, I did something dumber. I let it ride. The next shift, I blocked surveillance angles without being asked. I asked Tommy to swap positions when the player came back, told him table 4 had a rowdy guest I'd cover. He didn't say thank you, didn't nod, just moved. That was confirmation. We never spoke about it, but from then on we worked in parallel. Him clearing space for his player, me clearing space for him. I told myself it wasn't real crime. The house still won. The players weren't cheating, just seeing patterns faster than most. But deep down I knew it wouldn't last. It didn't. 3 weeks later, someone upstairs flagged the data. A cluster of wins at table 7. Same pit, same time frame, same face in the crowd. A junior analyst sent a report to surveillance. Surveillance forwarded it to compliance. Compliance sent it to HR. By then, it didn't matter what we said. They pulled footage, slowed it down, found Tommy in the frame, 3 feet from the player, looking away just before every big win. They fired him on a Tuesday. No warning, no write-up, just a manager and a box. He left without saying a word. Didn't even clean out his locker. I expected a fallout. Expected to be next. But somehow, it didn't happen. I think it was timing. The angles. The fact that my name wasn't on any report and I hadn't been the one closest to the action. Or maybe I was just better at being invisible. They give me more shifts after that. Said I had a sharp eye. Said they appreciated how I stayed clear of the situation. Asked me to help onboard a new guy named Trevor, who kept asking about when breaks were. I smiled. Said, sure. Then I started doing exactly what Tommy did. Only better. I didn't use the same player, didn't repeat the patterns, rotated shifts, rotated signals, never crossed the same camera twice. I worked with 2 spotters. Quiet, consistent, just hungry enough to play the long game. Instead of standing near the table, I walked behind, let the signal run through the drink cart girl who wore a necklace I gave her that she thought was lucky. She never asked why I always stood by the west camera blind spot when she passed by. She didn't need to. The money wasn't flashy. It was quiet. Envelope in a parking garage, phone credit topped up, a loan paid back I hadn't told anyone about. I still clocked in on time, still ran drills when corporate came through. But every now and then, I'd hear a guest complain about how hard it was to win lately, and I'd laugh a little inside. Because it wasn't hard. Not when you already knew where the edge was. 6 months in, I got a job offer somewhere else. Better pay, better hours, no uniforms. I didn't leave a notice. Just emailed HR and dropped my badge in the slot behind the break room. No farewell,
No contact. Just gone. So I covered for someone I thought I owed, watched them get burned, then stole their blueprint and made it cleaner. A happy ending. Screw that place.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed your time here. There's an endless number of forgotten conversations and stories out there. I would love to see you again as I share them. Take care and stay well.